In this video, I want to cover an important topic when it comes to 5 important things you guys need to recognize when it comes to getting involved in a long-term basis with single moms. So let's hop straight into this, because over the course of the years, I've done a lot of coaching calls with the guys, and I've got a call booked next week with a guy that's very high profile, makes over $250,000 a year, very successful in his field, but he's very, very badly tied up on a single mom that basically abandoned him, left him. He's got one itis for it. So let's hop into the 5 things. Now, before we go into it, I want to say this. Yes, I know there's some ladies out there that are going to be like, not all women are like that. There's unicorns out there. Congratulations. Your unicorn ribbon is in the mail. It's coming your way. But on a balance of probabilities, these are the 5 most important things, guys, that you really, really need to be a hell of a lot more attentive to, so you don't wind up in a situation where you can't function or you have some issues getting over a lost one, usually the single mom. Number 1, cuckoldry. Now, if you're not familiar with what cuckoldry is, this is probably one of the biggest factors that most smart guys, when they're navigating the sexual marketplace, will pass on single moms, because usually the biggest reward when it comes to children is the fact that they carry your DNA and your last name. It's such an important thing that when you get into Hollywood pieces or media pieces that involve royalty or anything that's regal, you know, for example, let's take Game of Thrones as a recent example. You heard throughout the entire series, well, he's not a Stark, you know, and that's what the consistency is when it comes to cuckoldry is, yeah, it is important, but it's so important to men as fathers that they know that their name is passed on. Right? They know that their name carries meaning, and that name with its DNA is passed on. And when you get involved with a single mom and you start to raise her kids, you're basically raising another man's children. You're a cuck. There's animals in the wild that'll basically drop their eggs in the nest of other birds, you know, more specifically, and those dumb birds will raise the eggs that are hatched as their own. They don't pay attention to the details, and that's really what guys get themselves into when they get wound up with single moms. Is they end up getting cuckolded, where they end up essentially applying their tools, resources, and everything to the genetic investment of another man. It's not particularly rewarding. It's often used as a disparaging term on the internet these days. It's usually the number 1 reason why most guys pass on it. And if that's not enough for you, I got 4 more coming your way. All right, let's hit on number 2. So the second problem with getting involved on a long-term basis with single moms, fellas, is you've got 100% responsibility with 0% authority. What I mean by that is when the children, her children specifically, need something, resources, your time to fix something, car's broken, tuition's due for college or university or something like that, they're our children. But when it comes time to discipline them or to enforce boundaries, most guys often find that they're her children at that time. And that's not a great deal for guys, because you're basically used like an ATM. You're used to facilitate her new world order, the conditions that she wants her children to live in, to benefit from specifically. So understand that if you do get involved with a single mom, not only 1, are you being cucked, but number 2, for the most part, you're going to end up having 100% responsibility with no authority. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg if you're involved in the relationship. Usually it doesn't end there. Usually it lasts a little bit longer, especially if you're living in a way that the state determines would be considered a marriage, whether it's common law, whatever it is that it's going to be called where you live in the world. But there's many, many cases that I've come across where guy gets involved with a woman with children in tow from prior relationship or relationships in some case. Sometimes it's many kids from several different fathers. And, you know, they're together for a few years, and for whatever reason, things don't work out. She wants to bounce and ends the relationship. He may have, during that period of time, paid off all of her debt, paid for tuition, school, things for her kids, and he can be on the hook over the long term for child support for children that aren't even his. I don't know if there is a greater reason why you should consider avoiding getting deeply involved with single mothers than that. But that alone, if the state is going to make you or hold you accountable and responsible for children that you did not father, it's absolutely absurd to me. Men knowing this, there's no excuse once you know this, but knowing this would continue to pursue a long-term relationship with a single mom. Now, some guys will do it. It's usually because they either aren't aware of the details, one, or two, it's low-hanging fruit and it's an easy option for them, right? It's easy to get into it. Let's move on to number 3. All right, so the third one is the victim mindset. This is an interesting one. So I'll put a card up on the top right from my experience dating a single mother. You should check that video out after you finish watching this. I recorded it about 4 years ago. And one thing that you need to understand is that I have not come across a woman that had children in tow from a prior relationship that did not subscribe to a victim mindset. It's quite common in the narratives that toxic feminism suggests to women, because the problem with that version of today's toxic feminism is it tends to encourage women to be the victim. Like there's always some oppressor holding them down. There's a patriarchy. There's somebody that's doing the exact same job that's making $1 for every 70 odd cents that she earns. There's always some narrative around that. And if you're involved with somebody that has a victim mindset, people with a victim mindset simply cannot be happy. They're always going to be looking for an oppressor. They're always going to be looking for a villain. Anybody seeking a villain in life is always going to have a hard time with that. Now, you may not immediately be who she deems to be that problem or that villain, for example, but at some point in the future, you're a man, she's a woman, and feminism isn't particularly warm to masculinity in men these days. If you haven't noticed, you need to be aware that there's going to be issues with victim mindset. Now, that's not just something you're going to have to deal with her. You're also going to end up dealing with it with her children. Let me give you a good example. So we talked earlier about authority without responsibility. If you want to exercise some authority, let's say, and enforce some boundaries, let's say her kids are behaving badly, maybe they're becoming bratty, they're maybe a little entitled, there's something that requires some, reeling in. You got to put some boundaries around it, and you try to enforce them. A lot of the times, because her mom because the kid's mom already subscribes to a victim mindset, they're automatically going to default to that because that's what they know. They're children. They don't know any better, right? They're always a product of their environment. So if mom subscribes to a victim mindset, has issues with patriarchy or whatever narrative that she might be using, her ex is a bum, he is a loser, which is an interesting thing, by the way, because she's the one that picked him. At the end of the day, she's the one that decided to, it's men that propose to women, and she says, I do. So why would she do that? But that's an entirely different topic. But at the end of the day, the kids will also use nearly the same strategy on their mom. And then again, that's when you'll find that, you've got kids that are no longer ours, but they're now hers. And when you try to enforce the boundaries, the emotional manipulation that comes out of that with her kids is going to be problematic for you. It's going to be exhausting. All right, let's move on to number 4. So number 4 is financial issues. From my experience, I'm an entrepreneur, I have multiple sources of income. My experience in the dating pool and in a lot of these guys that I've coached that have run into problems with women on the sexual marketplace when it comes to getting involved with single moms, they don't work high-end paying jobs. Most of them don't anyway, if I'm being honest. They, for the most part, will select professions like teaching, nursing, child care giving, reception, aesthetics things, stuff like that. They're not particularly high-paying jobs. And if they've got kids in tow, they're often usually fighting with their ex for access to money and the children, which actually brings another problem I can touch on very briefly. You end up dealing with custody overwhelm because still in this day, women get about 80% of the custody orders awarded to them. So that means the kids are going to be with her most of the time. There's a lot of guys that find themselves in a scenario where they end up not only being cucked raising another man's kids, but he may in fact, if he has kids, if he's divorced, end up spending more time with another man's kids than he gets to spend with his own because his ex has custody most of the time as well. So the dynamic of that is bizarre. But coming back to the financial issues, most women don't have a whole lot to show for themselves when you meet them and they've got kids in tow. I haven't met that many personally myself. And of course, most of the guys that I've coached that have been dealing with problems exiting a long-term relationship or even a marriage if they got involved with one with a single mom are often, of course, the breadwinners because of hypergamy, right? You know, women always like to marry up, date up. It's the same thing. If she's left the kid's father and she's looking for another guy, it's generally speaking, what she's looking for is some kind of beta provider, right? Somebody that's reliable, that has a good job, you know, has access to resources that would be useful to her and her kids, for example. So it's not like, you know, you guys are going to find yourself splitting bills. What'll usually end up happening is some story or some narrative is going to come out about how her kids want to meet you. Then you start going out and you're no longer buying her dinner. You're buying her and her kids dinner. You're no longer, you know, taking a vacation with her down south. All of a sudden her kids are in tow and you're looking after them. You're feeding them. You're entertaining them, which gives you a lot less time for yourself. All right, and the fifth and last one that I want to cover is the reprioritization of your time and your purpose in life. If you guys have followed me for a while on my channel, you guys know that I'm often talking about finding your purpose, putting a dent in the universe, and making sure that you've got some impact in life. And one of the things that you'll notice will end up happening if you do get involved with a single mom and ignore my advice is you're going to end up having to reprioritize yourself in the pecking order. I always tell guys that if you're going to allow a woman to enter your life, she should be a complement to it and not the focus. Often what will end up happening when guys get involved with single moms, again, it's usually because they have a lack of options or they're only able to get the low-hanging fruit. They end up putting themselves in a position where they're no longer their own mental point of origin, meaning with every choice, with every decision they make, they consider themselves first, but they end up putting themselves behind her job, the crazy chick from the accounting department that she, you know, bitches about every day, her kids' extracurricular activities, the cat, the vet bill with the cat, and then maybe, you know, you come in like fifth, sixth, or seventh or something like that. But often what ends up happening, fellas, is you're really not that much of a priority to her. She's going to disagree with me on this, of course, because it doesn't look bad, or sorry, it doesn't look good if you end up putting yourself in a bad position where you're no longer your own mental point of origin. There's a lot of pointing and sputtering that you guys are going to find in the comments at this point. You're going to see a lot of angry women saying, well, that's not true, or they're going to make ad hom attacks on me. Here's the thing, guys. I've not met a single mom where it would have been worth my while to get involved in it. There's a lot of other potential problems that could come out of getting involved beyond the 5 that I've mentioned there. I'll give you a real quick example. Let's say that you're a dad and you got a daughter and she's young. The biggest risk to little girls is in blended families when they get involved and they've got step siblings that might potentially assault or violate her. It happens quite a lot. So you have to have your wits about you and consider that it's probably better for you guys if you're going to get involved with a single mom, you do it on a very limited basis. If guys ask me, I'm usually quite honest with them. I'll say play them, don't date them, and certainly do not move in with them or live in a way that the state looks like or that the state could view as a marriage. So be decisive and firm with boundaries when it comes to stuff like this. Your greatest ROI, fellas, is going to be investing in yourself, doubling down on becoming a better version of yourself, and of course, you know, making more money, making bank, making more muscles, learning new skills if you're not involved in combat sports. Those are the sorts of things that I would encourage you to do, because if you're forced or you find yourself stuck with low-hanging fruit more often than not, it's because your value is not high enough.
All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel, hit subscribe.